into an art gallery or go to the theater, you're looking at something that's been completed. What you don't see are the false starts, the early drafts, the long hours of hard work, and sudden moments of inspiration that are the real acts of creation. How does the germ of an idea become a completed work of art? How does a new play, opera, or musical get to the stage? Tonight, we start with a look at 4 brand new works that premiered recently in Chicago and find out how they were created. When Victory Gardens Theater won the 2001 Tony Award, it was in part because they've presented so many world premieres.
We have 12 writers who consider this their home theater. Jeffrey is one of the writers. He is one of the most prolific of the writers and one of the most popular of the writers.
Jeffrey Sweet's newest play, Immoral Imperatives, is about an unusual relationship between a retired professor, his much younger wife, and a man who comes to live with them, initially to rehab their house.
There are some ideas where you see something out there and you say, oh, that's interesting, I want to investigate that. And then some plays start off with something that just an itch inside yourself that you have to scratch and find out why that's itching.
He was a cracker, right out of Harvard town, an ivy whacker. The character is always first and foremost the heartbeat of the character, so it always starts with rhythm for me.
Michael John LaChiusa, who wrote the Tony-nominated musicals The Wild Party and Marie Christine, was approached by the Lyric Opera Center for American Artists with an invitation he couldn't refuse.
They came to me, this opera company, and I said, I'm show trash. You know, I don't, opera, you know, I write show trash. You know, I'm just a show trash kind of guy. And they said, it's okay, we like show trash, do what you want to do. So I thought, well, geez, with an opportunity like that, to write something original, an original libretto, which is a very rare thing too, not based on a book, not based on a play, not based on any source material. I thought that would be an extraordinary challenge for myself to take on.
LaChiusa's story, Lovers and Friends, Chautauqua Variations, twists and turns as a group of friends, a poet laureate, his wife and daughter, a senator, a conductor, and others, gather for a weekend in Chautauqua, New York, where LaChiusa spent his summers.
Sometimes you write a piece of music and then you find the words to go with it, or sometimes the words do come first and then you find the music that is already there. I always find when I build a score, I like to have like this moment, that moment first in place.
I sing everything that I do. I write by singing. I write by kind of being in the middle of it. And you can feel it coming out of your mouth and coming out of your fingers. You can feel when it's all the right thing and when the instinct is right.
In 1999, the Tony Award for Original Musical Score went to Jason Robert Brown for Parade, a lavish production that ran on Broadway for several months. His newest musical, which premiered at Northlight Theater, was on a very different scale.
The last 5 years was an attempt on my part to write a song cycle for a man and a woman. And I thought if I can do that, if I can just keep it that contained, that would be exciting for me. The man tells the story of a love affair from the first date up until the end of the marriage. The woman tells the story of the exact same love affair, but she tells it from the end of the marriage backwards, so that we only see them meet in the middle at the actual wedding.
Not all musicals are original stories. The Goodman Theater recently assembled a stellar team, which included playwright Terrence McNally, John Kander and Fred Ebb, Chicago-based director Frank Galati, and choreographer Anne Reinking. They were asked to create a musical version of The Visit, Friedrich Dürrenmatt's classic 20th century drama about a rich woman who returns to the village of her birth to exact a terrifying revenge.
We all enthusiastically said yes to it, and then people who knew the piece thought, how on earth are you going to make that musical? And why?
And now, at last, the old lady pays a visit.
My first job is to honor the spirit of Dürrenmatt in doing this. You write it with a sense of what's going to appeal to a choreographer in this, what's going to appeal to a lyricist and a composer. So in a sense, you're providing the construction, the blueprint for the show that's going to eventually be built.
Terrence would start to write scenes or an outline, and Fred and I from that, or from things that we had talked about with Terence, would begin to find moments that were musical.
We would get together, usually at Fred Ebb's apartment, just above Central Park, and we would sit in the kitchen and have donuts or sandwiches, peanut butter and bacon, things like that. Anne Reinking and I and Terence and John and Fred would chew over the material and think about, well, what if, what if, what if?
Often the next step is hearing what the work sounds like. To do this, Victory Gardens assembles the cast, director, and writer for a workshop.
Some of the workshop is just about exchanging information. Does this mean this? Does this mean that?
Every one of the world premieres gets a workshop period. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, when we concentrate on the text and on the text alone.
What I bring to this process is just trying to interpret the text as clearly as I possibly can so that Jeff hears the play he wrote. She is, yes, good-looking. And she is dressed in clothing that calls attention to some aspects of her good-lookingness.
So this is the point at which I'm trying to find out what is confusing and what doesn't work so that I can fix them before we go into final rehearsal.
How do you know when you're done with a new piece?
You're never done with a new piece. I don't think it ever is finished.
Practically speaking, though, you have a point at which you do know. You have to say, okay, I'm done, and this is how we're going to work on it.
And this is what it's going to be, and you live with it. And there's also that point, though, in rehearsals, when you're working on a musical, where it's not yours anymore. It belongs to the director, and it belongs to the actors, it belongs to the musicians.
I will pretend to be the man you'd have me be. I'll never compromise like you have. I'll never compromise myself.
There's nothing that's gone before that's given you a template. Why would you want to do this?
Because you're not compared to, 38 recordings of the piece that you did, because you don't want to live in a museum your whole life, because it's so exciting to be part of a creative process where the thing is changing every day.
It's exciting to be the first one to create a role. I think you have so many options that are open to you, and I think that new works tend to be even more collaborative than just putting on a regular theater piece or opera piece. So I think, the sky can be the limit.
Let's try it on. Good, that was great. For me, with new work, I get to help shape the work. It's more creative for me and less interpretive in a way. It's about kind of mining what the author's intention was, how to add to that, how to create a visual world that will support it, how to create acting choices that will support it. The play is the thing, or the opera is the thing, and it's above, hopefully in a rehearsal room, it's above anybody else, including the director.
The challenge is staging for people who are primarily non-dancers, which I actually enjoy. So sometimes I can come in with a great script of lots of steps, and it doesn't make any difference what I've done. I have to adjust it to the people and make sure that I, show their best side, continue to tell the story, and do what's appropriate for the people that I have.
The last time we saw this was in the workshop. How has your perception of your character changed since then?
What has changed is that there are added layers, and there's more depth to this person than I was picking up on in the beginning. I know her better, yeah, and I like her a lot. Come on, let's see. And I wish I could be more like her, actually, to tell you the truth.
Everywhere you.
Well, when you're working in theater, be it a play or a musical, the last element to be added to the production is the audience. That's why the preview process is so important.
In their listening, in their laughing, in their fidgeting, in their coughing, in their yawning, in their getting up and walking out, or in their being on the edge of their seats. They're going to tell us, how we're doing.
This is a 4-character play. The audience is the 5th character. Part of the purpose of previews is to really sharpen the performances, but also to sort of discover how different audiences will react to different things. So much of comedy is about timing and how you phrase a particular line. Dennis, for example, has really discovered a really wonderful moment where he just sort of waits a little bit.
Is there a point?
He just sort of did that once and found that if he did that a little longer, then the audience would start rolling with the laugh.
Our audience is very important to us, and yes, they are part of the collaboration. They're like the kid who sits on their mother or father's lap. They get to hear the story and hopefully become involved and live and breathe with these people who are on stage. And the people who started it, who wrote it and directed it and choreographed it and all this sort of stuff, we sit in the very back getting very depressed because it's out of our hands now. We're the parents who let our children go.
Going to see our toys ascending.